Hey everybody, it's Rhonda with Peach and Valley, and today we're going to start painting on our Sanderson sisters. I'm doing this as a pre-recorded video only because I just don't think we're going to have time to do this as a live. It is kind of lengthy since we've got 3 of the sisters to paint, but today we're going to do that, and so we're going to get started on Mary here. And again, we don't sell the file for this, but we do sell the blanks in our shop at peachandvalley.com. It comes as a set, and Mary is in 3 pieces. You have the front of her dress here, and her hair is a layer. So we're gonna go ahead and get started on the orange part of her dress. And we're going to be using the color Outgoing Orange. And we always use Sherwin-Williams paints for our projects. And I'm going to go ahead and we're going to apply this with the baby wipe. So get yourself a clean baby wipe. And you're going to dab some of that paint on there. Go ahead and move her out of the way. And we're going to go ahead and start painting on her dress here. Now this part's going to be covered with the vest part or the corset part of her dress. So don't even worry about if you get orange on that. Don't worry about that. You're gonna see this one is just really easy to paint. It's just a lot of shading techniques that we're gonna use mostly on her. Okay, so we've got that base color down, and then you can go back and clean up any of these areas that you might have gone over into, just so that it makes it easier when it comes time to paint in that skin tone. Alrighty. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to set this aside, and we're going to let this dry. We are going to move on to her corset, and her corset color is called Fine Wine. It is this really pretty pinky color. Get that to come out. There we go. We got some to come out of the bottle there. And again, we're going to do the same thing with our baby wipe. And we're going to set this aside to dry. Now we're going to put a base coat on her hair. And the base coat on her hair is going to be called Concord Grape. So we're going to do all of her hair in that color, and then we're going to go back and shade it with a black, and then also we're going to highlight it with a color called Magical. That's what it's called. It's called Magical. See where the wood is taking on a little bit of a different color right here. We'll just kind of try and blend that. That's the thing with wood, you just never know what color that is going to come in on those. So we'll let that dry, and we'll probably go back and put a second coat of this on there. Okay. So after this is dry, we want to go ahead and give it a light sanding with 220 grit sandpaper. And this dries very quickly because you are putting it on with the baby wipe. I like to give that a... There we go. We're going to go in and shade it with Spicy Hue. So go ahead and grab your angled brush. Let me get one that's a little bit wider than that one. Here we go. I'm going to grab an angled brush, and you're going to wake it up in the water, get it nice and wet, and make sure you have a wet paper towel for dabbing off some of your water. I like to keep a wet paper towel here on my tray. And we're going to dab off some of that water. Load your brush, just the toe of your brush, and just work some of that off. And if you don't feel like you have enough water in there, just grab a little more water. And we're gonna go in and we're gonna shade all of the outer edges of her dress. And then I'm also going to go back and I'm going to shade this area here where it's going to meet up with the corset. Then I want to go back and I want to shade these areas as well. Just so that once we get the corset put back on her, it looks like it's sitting on top of her dress. I mean, it is, but this will give it even more dimension. Okay, set that aside to dry. And let's work on our corset. Give it a quick sand. And for the shading on the corset, we're going to shade it with a color called Fired Brick. And just go around the outer edges of the corset. See, it looks like this takes a lot of time to paint, but it really doesn't. I think all the shading just gives it that illusion that it's a lot of work. All right, that's the corset. Darken it up just a little bit right here, a little bit more. Okay, that's her corset. So basically her outfit is done. We're gonna go ahead and move on to her hair. So we'll set those pieces aside. So for her hair, let me give it a sanding and we'll see how that purple looks. It's like I said, we're gonna go back in and put some black and some highlights in there. I think it'll be okay. I don't think we're gonna need to add any more color here. So for the black, I like to use Bohemian black. It's not like a solid black. It's almost like a, I don't know, an ashy black. It's really a cool black color. So we're just gonna go and we're gonna shade where all of the score marks are on the hair. Load your brush. And we're gonna go in and just start shading on these score marks. And just make sure you got lots of water. Water is gonna be your friend here today. And you don't have to follow every single score mark. You can just look and see which ones you want to have shaded. There's no right or wrong here. It's whatever looks good to your eye, because you can always go back and lighten it up with some of that, the magical color that we're going to use in a little bit. Just kind of get these tips a little bit. Get a little bit of that in there. Okay. So we've got, if you can tell, we've got quite a bit of dark going on. I think I might put a little bit more up in here. So it looks like there's some movement with her hair. Here we go. Fun. I like that. Okay. So we've got our shading in. Now we want to go add some highlights. And again, for the highlights, we want to use the color Magical. Sometimes I'll just test it to make sure there's enough water. Sometimes it's hard to see on that white, to make sure there's enough water in it. That's good. We're just going to go and give it some highlights on some of the tip areas. Tops of her hair. And maybe around this part of her hair. And the ends. So it brightens up her face a little bit. And then I also want to put some up in here. So add a little bit more color. Just to show some of that movement. Like I said, there's no right or wrong way to do this. It's whatever looks good to your eye. I like that. Fun, fun, fun. Let's go ahead and put it on her here. You can see it, how it's all highlighted there. I do like that. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna move on to her face. For light skin tone, we like to use a color called Playa Arenosa. I don't even know if I said that right. It's a Sherwin-Williams color. Put these aside. Go ahead and paint her. We're going to paint her face and her neck in this color. We'll go back and clean those score lines out that separate her face and neck, chest area. Just take a pin and clean out those lines. There we go. And you don't need to worry about these lines up here because the hair is going to be covering all of this. You want to make sure you can't see any of that under the skin. And her lips, we're going to go back and do those as well. To dry before we sand it. Okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to trace out her mouth with my pen. I love her little crooked smile. It cracks me up. right, so once her face is dry, we just want to go and give it a quick sand. And then we'll add some her lips and some cheeks and some eyes. So for her cheeks, I'm going to show you, I like to use pastel chalks, or you could use a dry brush technique on her cheeks. But we are going to go ahead and we're going to use a pastel chalk. These are chalks. I have actually had these chalks for a very long time. I got these when I used to scrapbook. So I've had these for quite some time, but you can get any chalks. Pastel chalks will work for you. And then I like to use these sponges. They're eye applicators from the Dollar Tree. I pick these up. I use them for these types of things. So you're just going to put a little bit of that onto your sponge. Let me move this out of the way. And you want to rub some of it off because you don't want her cheeks too bright. But then we're going to go back in and we're just going to add her cheeks very lightly. Just real light, and then you can press down where you feel that it needs to be darker. Press a little harder. Okay, so there's one cheek, and then we're going to do this side. And just lift up every now and then just to make sure her cheeks are kind of even. You can see that. They're not too dark, but they're definitely there. Fun. Cute. Okay. And for her lips, we're going to use the Fired Brick color. And we will paint in her lips. And I'll just use a little liner brush. Oh, not that one. Here we go. I'm just going to use a little liner brush for this. Make sure I don't have too much of mine. Here we go. And just paint in her lips. Take your time doing this because I know this area is tiny. You could even use your watercolor pencils if you wanted to color her lips in too, if you're not comfortable doing this tiny area with a brush. I like to use one of these magnifying glasses. I'll set it up and just put my piece in front of it. It helps me to see these lines so much better. Her crooked little smile. Too cute. Okay, and I see where I kind of went off track just a tiny little bit. I'm going to take my baby wipe and clean that up. There we go. I might have taken a little too much off right there. Fun. Okay, we're going to let her lips dry a little bit, and we'll probably need to put one more coat on her lips. I'm going to let that dry before I make a mess of it. And then I like to put a little bit of a shading around the face. So I'm going to use, it's just a little bit darker shade than what we used on her face. This shade is called Beige Intenso. It's also a Sherwin-Williams color. And it's just going to give a subtle shadow around her face. What we're going to do is we're going to go underneath her chin. And again, this is just a very subtle shade underneath her chin. I don't know if you can see that. And then we're also going to go around this part of her face here and a little bit under her hairline. Okay, I think that's plenty. Now I'm going to go back to her lips and just give them one more coat. There we go. Much better. Okay. We're going to go ahead and let her mouth dry. And we're going to start working on putting her together. So I like to use the Stick Fast Instant Adhesive. This is the thick one. Make sure you get the thick, not the thin. And we'll do her eyes after we get her hair on her, just so I can see how she's situated a little bit better. But you don't need a lot of this glue. It goes far. Just match this up to your score lines. Okay. We're going to go ahead and let that dry there, and we're going to pop her hair on. You can see I just kind of dot this glue around because, like I said, it does go far. It sticks really well. And just make sure you've got her hair on there in the right spots. Give a little push. Now we can go back and put our eyeballs on. So for her eyes, you can get you can use a toothpick that you've cut the tip off of it. You could use the bottom of a paintbrush, and you could just dip your paintbrush in to your black to get your polka dots, and just practice on, you know, a piece of paper to make sure it's the right size that you want for her eyes. I like to use, this is just something I have. It's like a little skewer with the ball on the end of it. I like to use this. It's always been the perfect size for their eyes for me. So just kind of eyeball it to see where you want her eyes. There we go. Cute. Okay. So let me flip this over so I don't get any of this paint on her back, because this is an order for someone. I'm gonna let that sit there and dry. So now I'm gonna work on the strings for the corset. And I picked up some of this cording. They call it decorative trim. I picked some of this up at Hobby Lobby. I got it half off. It's 1/8 inch black decorative cording. And I use this on all of the sisters. So what you want to do is you just want to measure your pieces. Measure, because we're going to put glue in here. We're going to put a piece there and a piece there. So you just want to measure it and then trim your cording. And we're going to go ahead and attach that cording. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and glue this on. So just grab your glue gun, and I just put a little bit of glue on each side of each end. And you don't need a lot. And just pop it on there. Okay, if you don't want to burn your fingers, pick up one of these silicone makeup applicators from the Dollar Tree, and I use this to press my pieces down. Okay, and we're going to do it for the next one. Okay, and then the other direction. The nice thing about using this is you don't have to worry about getting those white, you know, when you put your hand on hot glue and then, or finger on hot glue and take it off, it turns it white. This doesn't really do that. Now the only last thing we have to do is we have to give her that iconic beauty mark right here by her lip. So I use a toothpick because you want this to be small. You don't want it to be too big. So I just use the end of a toothpick, get a little bit of my paint, and give her the beauty mark, just like that. Not too noticeable. It's noticeable enough, but not too noticeable. So that's it. This is Miss Mary. So we've got her all done. Alrighty, we are back. Now we're gonna paint Sarah Sanderson. And she comes in 3 pieces as well. Got her hair, her corset, and then the main body piece. So I'm gonna actually start with her hair. And the base coat on her hair is going to be an antique white. This is just an antique acrylic white that I picked up at Hobby Lobby. I believe it's their brand of antique white. So we're going to use this, and we are going to apply it with a baby wipe. Ouch, I got a little splinter. And then what we're going to do is we are going to go back and apply some highlights and some shading to her hair. So put this down as a base coat. And then just double check your edges. And if you got some on the edges, just go ahead and wipe it off. And I think the rest of it looks pretty good. Okay, we're gonna set that aside to dry. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna work on this part of her dress here. And this part of her dress is called Pressed Flower. It's a real pretty pinky color. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put that part on with the baby wipe too. Just try and be real careful around the skin lines there. Doesn't matter if you go into the hair area because the hair is going to cover that, so I'm not too worried about the hair part. If you use your fingertip, you can control it pretty good to keep it in the lines there. And we'll be going back to shade all of this here. And you can just remove if you got any over in this area, even though it's going to be a darker color, could affect it a little bit. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and let that dry. We're going to move on to the sleeves of her dress and the corset. And this color is that fine wine color again. It's that real pretty darker pink color here. Grab some of that. her corset and her sleeves. And if you're not comfortable doing it with a baby wipe, you can also go back and you could always go back and do a paintbrush if you wanted. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and let that dry. And her hair is probably dry now, so we're gonna go back to her hair. Give it a light sanding with 220 grit sandpaper. The reason I like to sand it is to knock down the fibers, and it also gives the paint a smoother surface so it flows better for shading. Okay, so for the shading on her hair, we're going to use a color called Cut the Mustard. And we're going to do all the dark highlights on her hair. And just make sure you got plenty of water on your brush. Outside edges of her hair. And I also want to get it on the inside part here. And then we're going to go back and give her hair some highlights with a little bit of white. I'm just going to go ahead and grab some of that antique white that we were using earlier that we put on with a baby wipe. And you don't need a whole lot of it. We just need a little bit of it here. I'm going to test it on my hand. Yes, that looks good. So just pick some areas that you want highlights in. And just add your highlights. See where we added the highlights on her hair there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and set that aside to dry, and we're going to go and do some shading on her dress. So let's make sure this is dry, give it a quick sanding. And for the light pink, we're going to use the same the same fine wine color, and we're going to shade this one with the fine wine. And then I'm going to shade where her hair would be covering her dress right there. Just this edge a little bit. Okay, and then for the darker area, we're going to go back and use the fired brick on that one. Go. And then I'm also going to do the outside of her sleeve. Okay, we're going to go ahead and let that dry right there and sand her corset, and then put a little bit of shading on here, just around the outer edge, because most of this is going to be covered up with the cording. Here's our skin color again, Playa Arenosa. So anywhere where there's skin, you're just going to want to paint that. And then you can go back and clean out score lines wherever you need to clean them. I know this looks messy, but you're not even going to see any of this part here once we get her hair put back on. I am not too worried about it. Go back and clean up those score lines. Okay, and we're going to let this dry. Okay, once her face is dry, we're going to go ahead and give it a light sand. And just be careful when you're sanding this area because you don't want to sand off her dress. Let's go ahead and give her shading on her face. This is, it's called Beige Intenso. I'm going to give her a shading on her, under her chin and around her jawline. I'm also going to give her a little bit of shading here down near her bust line as well. Now it's going to be time to do her cheeks. Remember, you only need just a little bit of this. It's almost like a salmon color. Pinky salmon color. Okay, you can see the little cheekies are done. I'm going to put a little bit more on this side here. We can go ahead and paint her lips with the fired brick. And her lips lips are probably gonna take 2 coats, just like the other one. Because it kind of goes on a little translucent because it's on such a light color at first. We're gonna go ahead and let her lips dry. And let's go ahead and start putting her together. Got that too close to the edge. Sometimes if I get the glue too close to the edge, I'll just use a toothpick. Kind of push it in, just because you don't want it oozing out the sides there. Otherwise you're gonna have a mess on your hands. Okay. And we'll let that dry. We'll put her hair on. Go back and give her lips one more coat. Alrighty. Go ahead and do her eyes and her beauty mark. Okay, so there is Sarah, and let's go ahead and do her corset. There we go. Okay, we are ready to work on our final sister. This is Winifred. We're going to go ahead and paint her. So we're going to start off with her dress. And she comes in 3 pieces as well: the corset, the hair, and the main body. So let's start off with her dress, and we're going to use the color Basque Green, and we're going to put that on with the baby wipe. Don't worry about the hair area. Try to keep it off the face area as much as you can. And then the collar and everything is going to get a darker green on it. I'm gonna remove some of this here that I got on her skin area. Even though it's not painted yet, I still don't want too much on those areas. That way the skin tone goes on evenly. Go ahead and let all of this dry while we work on her other pieces. So for her hair, the base color on this is going to be the outgoing orange that we used earlier. Go ahead and put that on the base of her hair. I'll fix those score lines too that are on her hair. Got a little heavy-handed with some of my paint. That's okay. And go back and clean up your edges. And just clean up some of those edges there. Sometimes these baby wipes get a little furry on your wood, but it can be, it'll all sand off. All gonna sand off. Okay, let's let that dry. Her corset is Concord Grape. Her dress is dry, so we're gonna go back and give her a quick sanding. And then we're going to do our shading with a color called Forest Wood. So What I'm going to do is we're actually going to paint in some sections. So we're going to paint her collar area here and then the inside part of her dress here. Okay. Now we're going to shade. Gonna be good. So we're gonna go ahead and let that dry and start working on her hair. And then for her hair, we're going to use a color called Spicy Hue, which is that spicy color. And then we're also going to use Fired Brick and add some shading to her hair. Basically, oops, I'm sorry. I'm gonna go ahead and shade pretty much the outside of her hair with this. Take that same color and just go along some of the lines. Use your judgment, however much you want on there. This is kind of, you can be messy with it. Just makes it look so much cooler. Makes it all blend together a little bit better if you're messy. Blend it all together a little bit. I just got my brush a little bit wet. No paint on it, just a little bit of water, and we're just gonna blend it all, almost like we did the water color leaves. It's hard to see. This lighting isn't the best lighting, but you can see how it's all starting to shade there. And then just to add a little bit more richness to her hair, we're going to use a little bit of that fired brick color. And we're just going to add it subtly in different spots of her hair. Remember, if you get it on in one spot and it's too much for you, just feather it out. Okay. All right, once her skin is dry, give it a light sand. I'm going to give her skin a little bit of shading. And we're going to go ahead and paint her lips with the fired brick. Okay. We're going to let that dry. And then we will go on to start putting her together. Actually, let's do her cheeks. I'm going to do her cheeks right now. Start putting her together. Let's do her lips one more time. And her eyes. And then the last part here, we'll have to work on the corset. And there you go. So now we've got all three sisters done. Get them all out here. So we've got Winifred and Mary. I'm sorry, Sarah and Mary. So there you go. There are the three sisters. I hope you all enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you'll all give it a try. And show us your photos on the group page. Come to the group page and show us your photos. We'd love to see them. I hope you all have a great night, great day. Hugs to everyone. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.